Hello, and welcome to the Be Purely Balanced podcast. I'm Dr. Crystal Couture, and today I'm here with Desiree Kim. Desiree is a welcoming, kind, and caring energy. She facilitates clients' journeys of unveiling the whole, perfect, and complete being that you already are. Clients share their session experience as magical, miraculous, and mysterious, profoundly creating authentic expression of self. As a celestial energy worker, Desiree facilitates connecting you to the infinite well of your inner wisdom. Peaceful inner work is conducted in a sacred space where aligning with body, mind, and spirit creates rejuvenation and transformation. Welcome, Desiree.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you on the show today, and I'm really excited to have our listeners get to know a little bit about you and your journey into healing. So why don't we start there?
Sure. Thank you. So a little bit about me. I am 42, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I live in South Florida now. And I have been on my own personal journey in life. Most of us are. That journey has included a lot of ups and downs, and specifically with a lot of trauma. And so it's interesting that where I land today as far as assisting others is really focused on trauma and transitions, whether they're not so great transitions, like we lose someone, or maybe something really amazing, like we're getting married, So that's a little bit, about where I've been as far as, my journey and how I got here. And I would say that most recently, about a year ago, this month actually, was a spiritual opening for me. So I did a lot of work on my own journey, and I'm still doing work on my own journey, continuing to transform. And about a year ago is when I had a spiritual opening that connected me to my guides. And they assist in the work that I do with people, helping me can maintain focus and receive information as well as stay grounded. And so that's a little bit about how this journey is kind of transforming for me.
Yeah, wow. I love this word of transformation. And I love that in your work, you're really spending time with people on transitions, because that time in the transitions can be so profound and so powerful.
Yeah. Sometimes when we're embarking on transition or moving into a new space, it can come as a surprise, just kind of like feeling like you're blindsided, or it could be intentional. It could be something that, like, oh, I'm ready to make some change in my life. And then you start making change and lots of things start changing. And it's really good to be able to have support on that part of the journey. It's one of the things that I find for myself, even I'm still working on reaching out for support. I have people that I go to, my teachers, my guides, and facilitators. And sometimes I'm hesitant because I think I got it all covered. And that's what we do sometimes. And then other times, I realize that it's time to reach out and receive support. And so it's an ebb and flow. It's really important to be able to allow ourselves to receive. And I think a lot of people are working on that nowadays, self-love and self-care, and moving into a space of recognizing that it's an important thing to do for ourselves, despite what might say, like, the general world view might have. I think more and more people are understanding that it's important to have a balance. And so it's important for me to keep that balance as I ask my clients to do the same. And I'm here for them on their journey.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think it comes up time and time again where we have, so many holistic healing practitioners coming on the show, right? And this idea of self-care and spending time with your teachers, spending time with your mentors, and really not being on an island is so important as a healthcare, provider, especially in the alternative medicine realms, So thank you for bringing that up. I'm really curious about celestial energy work, as this is your specialty. So why don't we start off by having you tell us a little bit about what is celestial energy work?
Sure. So celestial energy work is specifically referencing to the guides that I tap into. So there's actually two realms that made themselves present to me. And one, if you imagine, people are familiar with chakras, and you connect through the crown of the top of the head and moving upward into the cosmos. The guides that specifically came to me are called Archimedean star family, and they came in the form of a mother and a father type star energy, also a surgical star energy. And when I first received this opening and introduction, first of all, it was scary, and it was totally foreign for me. But also, as I navigated through reaching out to my friends that have guides and understand, more what was going on with me, I was able to really open up a level of communication. And so that communication opened up a channel down into the center of the earth. And so that's the ancestral energies of the earth, and more recently known to me as the Taino, which is the Indians that were in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands, that when Christopher Columbus came over, there's basically a mass genocide that happened. And those energies are there to support bringing healing to the rest of us through multiple races and generations. So celestial energy work, what it looks like is tapping into that celestial realm, the Archimedean star family, and opening up myself and stepping aside, so to say, my biases or my opinions or things like that, and asking for their support. And what happens is a multiple of things. As I'm working with someone on the table, I'll receive visions, I'll receive information, I'll receive what I call knowingness. So it might be a vision that comes along with an understanding. That's one of the deeper dive recorded sessions that I do for people. So because I'm stepped aside, I'm not going to remember most of what's going on. And then the star energy will come through in the form of what looks like to me symbols and lines, circles, triangles, squares, all types of different symbol shapes. And so those symbol shapes I follow along with my hand to open up the energy body, and the star energy comes through my crown chakra and through the palms and moves into the person to mend, remove, assist, support, unblocking. And it's combined together with the Taino energy, which is the ancestral energy of the earth, which provides grounding, but also at times the Indian tribe figures. I've had grandmother, I've had what looks to be like a medicine man come through to work on the organs of a person, work on emotional blockages. So yeah, that about sums it up as far as where the celestial connection is for the work.
Great. So I would love for you to talk about how this sort of download, how this awakening, this transformation, this, awareness of celestial energy really started, and how that sparked this healing journey for you. As well as healing others. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because as it's been about a year now, and the more I explore and learn from the star energy, the more I see I have been connected with it pretty much all my life. And I was either not aware, or it was very subtle, like, you know, way far in the back of your mind kind of thing. Because I would get information coming through, but I would just chalk it up to, oh, I'm an artist and I have an overactive imagination, or a very creative person, or, you know, what have you. And I remember even when I was a child, I would draw, and I would retreat, so to say, into this inner world where I could see the essence of who I was, and I resided as a star. And now at that time, I didn't see any stars around me. It was all just blackness. And it was just like a knowingness that that's where I resided as, you could say, my essence. Last year, when a more specific, I can call it more in your face type of opening happened for me, it was very unexpected. I actually was meeting a friend of mine for lunch at a cafe. And we had our lunch, and it was the day of the solar eclipse at the end of August last year. And she was leaving to go pick up her kids. And I figured to myself, well, I don't know how long these eclipses last, but I think I want to just hang out here and not be driving my car, just like enjoy it, and then I'll go, you know. So I hung out in the cafe for a little bit, and people were letting me borrow their glasses, and I could see, you know, kind of what was going on. And as that was transpiring, I noticed that I wasn't feeling quite right. And I didn't understand what was happening. It didn't feel like I was going to pass out, because you get that like a hiss that goes in your ears, you know. It felt like unstable. And so I decided that I would sit down. And I sat down with my feet on the ground, and I had my hands connected by the pads of the fingertips. So left hand connected, right hand connected at the pads. And I just started doing some intentional breathing, because I felt like I wasn't stable and I didn't really know. And some of my tools were, you know, breathing. I had Qigong in my background, you know, meditation and such. And so I moved into a state of breath work and just opening up. And as I was doing that, I started feeling some interesting sensations in my body. So the first noticeable sensation was at the very top of my head, at the crown. It felt like a warm tingling, and then it felt like something was like dripping down the sides of my head, kind of like a honey, like a very slow movement. And I noticed that what felt like spinning happening at that crown area. And so I got this visualization that of a crystal type ball that was like a representation of a chakra, and it had like mud on it. And as it started spinning around more, the mud started flinging off, and you can see the crystal, and it was just clear. There was no color to it. And after a while it's spinning, and I noticed that my two pointer fingers came just slightly apart. And I got this information that this was going to continue through all of the main chakras. And when all of the fingers came apart, that this would be done. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I felt everything going through each chakra, from, you know, the crown to the third eye, through the throat, through the heart, through the solar plexus, the sacral, and the root. And as it was getting down to the bottom, I still had two fingers that were connected. And I also had my elbows like propped up onto this chair. And so I was like, I don't see how this is going to happen. Like these are all kind of smushed together. Like, how are they going to come apart? And retrospectively, I realized that my spine was starting to elongate and straighten up. And that created some space, because the two fingers actually ended up coming very small amount, like if it was like a millimeter or something apart. And the information that I got was that all the data from my past trauma was lifting and moving into some sort of universal data bank. And so I was like, okay, again, very interesting. I didn't feel quite myself. I felt, after this whole thing happened, I felt like I was about 5 or 6 feet behind myself looking out. And I was noticing as I interacted with people, I, like, from this 5 or 6 feet behind me, the presence, would have like one single thought. But then I'd be noticing my human figure speaking a lot more words than what that thought was. And so it was really interesting experience. That went on for about 2 days. In the meantime, I had met with friends and we did a meditation out by the beach, and people that I know for a long time noticed how I looked different to them, and they were like, "What happened to you?" I really wasn't ready to tell this story. I was just like, this is not, I don't even really know what happened. I just know what I experienced, And so I went through the next few days, and a couple of interesting things happened. So I had won this craniosacral session at a raffle at the Holistic Chamber of Commerce when I first visited there. And I scheduled that craniosacral session for the day after the eclipse. So there I go. Now I'm in the session, and something interesting starts happening for me, because I actually normally, like when I meditate or I'm, in a different state, I see a lot of three-dimensional objects, lots of colors, lots of, messages come through. It's just it always felt like it was a, way for me to connect inside and get some guidance for myself. But this time, I noticed that I wasn't seeing anything three-dimensional. And what I was seeing was this mist that had colors to it. And so I'm seeing, like, maybe a yellow, and then a little while later, green. And I'm curious, because I'm like, why am I only seeing colors? And so I open my eyes a little bit as she's working on me, and I noticed that she's working on a specific chakra, and it's the color of the chakra. Now, up until this point, I never understood these colors of the chakras. Like, I was like, why is the heart green? I don't get it. Like, somebody picked these colors a long time ago, and that's the way it went. So, so I got finished with that session. I felt amazing. And I got to my car, and something tells me that I need to go see her again. So I scheduled an appointment to see her on that Friday. That's when things started getting really crazy, as if they're not crazy enough. So I go see her on Friday, and I go into session, and she starts working. She's at the creative center just below the navel, and I get a pink mist comes across, and I see like a little glowing like center to the pink mist, and it enters in through the top of my head and moves through all the chakras and attaches to my right ovary. And then I get a yellow mist that comes across, does the same thing through the crown all the way to the left ovary. And I hear this message that says, we are now your parents on this earthly journey moving forward.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I'm in the session. It feels kind of like a meditation, and somehow I'm just following along what's going on. And they call in the stars, this pink star and this yellow star call in a third star, a blue star, and it comes behind my throat area, and it moves around to the front, and it sends a laser right through the throat chakra and opens it up, pulls out this crystal ball looking like thing with a scroll in it, opens up the scroll, and I see all these symbols on the scroll. Now, these symbols look like what I've been painting in my paintings for the last couple of years. And so I'm like, oh my God, what the heck is going on? And I get this message that I'm going to intern under this star, and it clears out this throat chakra, lasers it back closed with this white blue light. And then, it put this little diamond-shaped thing in the throat chakra, and it morphed into this dragonfly eye looking like ball, and then closed it up and put like laser beam type things into the energy body around the neck. And I got this instruction that I wasn't supposed to speak for the next 3 days. And that if I had to, I would just very lightly. So I come out of this session and I am like totally like, what the heck just happened? And the craniosacral therapist is beside herself in joy. She is so excited. She's like, oh my God, you're a starseed, and this is amazing. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I don't know what just happened. I do, because I experienced it, but what just happened, you know? And so I followed the instructions. You know, I spent that night, I just talked a very little bit. I went into like this little crystal thing. There had like a crystal grid class there at the place that I went to. And then I realized I had to go home to my very scientific viewpoint husband. And I'm like, okay, how do I have this conversation and make it short? So I talk to him and I say, hey babe, I go, this is just going to sound weird, but I want you to know that it's very real to me. And I explained to him what happened. And I said, I'm supposed to go into silence, and I have a show I'm supposed to do tomorrow. I have a live painting show. I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm just going to go into the silence and I'll come out of it on Sunday. And so he said, okay. And he was like completely supportive, so supportive that I didn't even know. I woke up the next morning, I'm in silence, we're feeding dogs, and so is he. He decided to join me in silence. And so I was just like, wow. I felt so supported in this like very odd place that was coming through for me. And next couple of days goes by, I do the live painting, I put a little sign around myself saying I'm in a vow of silence, and they can put their number down and I'll call them on Monday. And I get out of, I go through and I'm thinking I'm going to get these messages about the symbols on the little scroll and the stuff that I've been painting. I'm like, oh, they're going to download all this stuff to me, you know, and I get some things, but not really anything significant. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what the heck's going on. Maybe that was just an experience. I don't know, you know. So I come out of the silence, and that's when I start getting a lot of information. And one of the things that comes through is that I'm supposed to, again, work with people. And the term that they used initially was psychic surgery. So I had heard of this before, but I didn't ever look into it. I didn't know what it was. And so I started Googling it. And the first things that start showing up are like these guys in some other country, and there's a whole bunch of people around them, and they're like hitting people on their head and they're falling backwards and they're like healed, you know. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot do this. Like, no, this looks like a scam. Like, I don't know what's going on here. And so I start getting like anxious and scared because I experienced all these things in this past week, and I am deeply feeling that something is communicating with me and calling me to do something. And 75% of me is very sure that I'm supposed to be now navigating into a different place in my life and operating in a different way. But 25% of me is absolutely terrified. So I call up a good friend of mine, Dion, and another friend of mine, Sonia, who have been teachers for me in the past and currently. And I just start asking them, you know, like, what do I do? What do I do? Like, I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but what do I do? I'm really terrified. And so they kind of talk me down in a way, and they both have like guides that they speak with. And Sonia, she says to me, she says, look at it like, after we talked for quite a while, she says, look at it like you are a teenager learning to drive a car. And I was like, that was the thing that landed with me most. And I was like, all right, I can settle in with that. And then Dion's like all excited. He's like, I want psychic surgery. I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing this. And he says, well, let me come over, and how about I, you know, hold space for you. I, you know, create a sacred space, and we can work on that 25% that's feeling like, you know, scared. And so I said, okay. He came over, and we did this beautiful session, and I felt a part of me move into a place where I had gone into a dream quite a while ago. And I moved, it was like in the dream, it was, I took an elevator up and I was out in the middle of like this galaxy on this like rock bed that looked like an Arizona rock bed. And there was like a stream of water over to the side. And so I'm back there in this place, and I get this message that comes through that says, go over to the water because it's not water. And I'm like, okay. So I walk over there, and it's blue and white and glowing. And they're like, okay, put your hands into the water. And so I put my hands into the water, and they're like, okay, breathe in. And breathe in the water to come up into your body. And so I do, and it does. And then they're like, go into the water. So I go into the water, and I'm floating under the water, you know, in meditation, I can breathe and all that. And I feel this part of me, like it's like a silhouette of myself, peel away from myself and just start floating into the depths of that water, light, whatever. And then I come out of the meditation style and our session, and I feel totally relaxed, and I feel confident that I can move forward. And so I asked Dion, you know, like, what should I do? You know, like, I don't know what to do. And he's, well, have you tried channeling with them? And I go, I don't know what that is. Like, and he's like, well, they're sending you messages. Like, maybe you can open yourself up to receive those messages. Have you tried, I think he called it something like inspired writing or something like that, where you just write and receive messages. And I was like, well, I used to do that on typewriter, like, you know, on the computer, I'd type and I'd get stuff coming to me, but I wasn't really creating it. You know, I felt like I was receiving it. He's like, yeah, go ahead, try that. I was like, okay. So over the next 3 days, I sat down at the computer, and I started to go into that, like what I remembered that I did in the past. And I'm like, nothing's coming, you know? And so I'm like, I get frustrated. And so I just ask a question. I'm like, why is this so frustrating, or something like that? And I get an immediate answer back. And so I type the answer, and then I type my next question, and I type the answer that comes through. And it's over the next 3 days, I spent like maybe 2 or 3 hour sessions. And I turned out with like 43 pages of manuscripts of transmissions that came through. And all of those transmissions were like a lot of sarcastic questions from me. like, how am I supposed to live my life? And you guys want me to do this, and exactly what am I supposed to be doing? And also, like, you know, when I really got a grasp of what they were meaning by this psychic surgery, it didn't have to be called that. And it was more that what I was describing earlier with the seeing the symbols and following and opening and learning through allowing myself to open up. And then they said something like, you're going to know when people are ready to work with you. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to know when people are ready to work with me? And they're like, you can ask them preliminary questions. And I'm like, can you give me those preliminary questions? And so they did, and that actually is my free consult on my website right now, because that's just what I'm following to do. So from there, I the first people that I worked with was the craniosacral therapist that did the session, and Dion, who took me through the meditation. And it was amazing, the results that they got just from me beginning and starting to get my confidence to be able to move forward. And so I started putting it out there to people that I knew that were in the spiritual world, and started working with them, and eventually created my package for the one type of session, which was the rooting session. And here I am today with a more full supportive process for people to journey with me. So yeah.
Wow. Okay, this is amazing. The thing that keeps coming up for me, though, is, you know, you have this very vibrant personality, but you do tend toward that sarcastic state. So it's amazing that you could find this way to just trust as all of this was unfolding so fast. Like, you had to trust for all of this stuff to happen. You were in that zone of trust. So how'd you get there? How'd you stay there?
Well, I was given instructions on how to prepare for the sessions that I was doing with people. And part of those instructions were bringing me back to the day of the solar eclipse. And so something I left out a little bit earlier with all of those chakras opening up was the word allowing kept coming through. And each movement down as things were opening up, I could tangibly feel in my body opening with the word allowing. And, you know, I won't say it was easy, number one. I won't say it was like overnight. And I'm still learning to trust, to be honest, you know, like very transparent. You know, I think there's a combination of things that was happening for me. First of all, seeing people receive results. That was important. And so it was like, okay, this is tangible, you know, it can be real. And at the same time, there was just a very strong, very grounded feeling in the center of my being that this is truth. And this is the calling I'm here to do. And I remember looking out my window one day in that kind of decision-making place of, am I going to move forward or am I not going to move forward? And I transported myself in a way, you know, just envisioning myself as being, you know, much older, you know, maybe 80, some older age, and thought to myself, you know, could I live with myself at that point in time, knowing that I turned away with this strong feeling of truth that was running through me. And I felt like this was a pivotal point of change, that I was just going to either choose to be on the edge of not knowing what was coming next and move into it, or cower and not serve myself. And it was, I would say, more of that, I can't not show up right now because it's so obvious. And so even though I don't know what I don't know, I get to find it out along the way. And each time I worked with someone and I would start seeing things that were coming through, and it would be specific stuff that they were working with, that they didn't even have to tell me anything before we started this session. It was just like these things were coming through as maybe stuff that happened from their childhood, or specific emotions that they might be dealing with in their family right now, or what have you. And what I've learned along the way is everything that comes through so far is past. So the readings that are happening are whatever's caught in the current energy body. It's not future tense. And so, you know, to answer your question, it hasn't been easy. The trust has definitely been something that I've had to move into, even in session, especially when I was starting in the beginning, opening myself up and asking for the Star family to, and the Taino family to please give me the strength and support me on not being attached to the outcome of the session. Because of course you want people to have a good session and, you know, feel relaxed or relieved or whatever comes out of it for them, clarity or connection to their authentic self. But at the same time, that's a bias. So to really receive. And yeah, it's been a journey, and it's a continuing journey for sure.
Wow. I love how you say being unattached to the outcome. You know, that's something that I find myself often saying as well. So I love that came up. I'm curious now, as an artist, you've been an artist longer than you've been a healer in the terms of physical, right? What you're doing in this life, even though both have always been present. Has your art changed since you've started to deepen your spiritual realm?
Yeah, it definitely has. And I also want to create a little bit of clarity around the word healer, because I don't view myself as a healer. I view myself as a facilitator or a guide, and I believe that people heal themselves. Yeah. To answer your question on the art, though, I actually, the evening when I was in silence and I had to do the live painting and have the little sign around myself, that piece of artwork was like a representation of what happened with me. There was all these symbols, and it's totally different from a lot of the artwork that I did up until that point. And after I moved into a space of exploring, really just tapping into that guidance stream from the Archimedean star family and the ancestral energies of the earth, and moving into a space. And I did a few paintings. They were very different than a lot of the pieces that I had done. And then that seems to close at it was the winter solstice. It was like I did two what I would call more aggravated paintings. Like it was like a lot of transition was going on in that December time frame for me, and so it was like a purging in a way. And then I started doing very small pieces, like 8x10s, and what happens is I just do a background, just kind of like a wash background, and I'll sit at the kava bar, or I'll sit somewhere, and most of the time it's kava bar. and I look at the canvas and I see the lines show up, and then I just draw the lines, and then they turn out to be this abstract line work stuff that sometimes turns into things like people have seen like gecko or birds, or things like phoenix has shown up. Some things that, like, I remember I was doing the line work and somebody was sitting across from me, and it was like they were seeing it from the opposite side, like if it was upside down, and they're like, "Oh, that looks like a lizard." And I was like, "It does." And then I turned it upside down, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, it does." So I added a couple of embellishments to make it look more like a lizard. And so most of those pieces, I think there's about probably 30, 40 something, maybe 50 of them that I've done so far. And they're more inspired. They're more in the moment. Although my paintings before that were more in the moment, I can feel the difference of like hesitation that would happen before, or more like structured, like in a box kind of feeling. Whereas now it's just like, I can totally mess it up. I'm totally okay with it being messed up at the end, and I don't like it, but I'm going to follow whatever the lines are supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So it seems like this process of awakening that you experienced directly impacted the art. And now, of course, the art is sort of reflecting back some essence of healing to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the question then becomes, when someone receives a painting from you, are they receiving that healing energy through the painting?
Well, it's definitely there for them to receive.
Yeah,
What I can say is there have been some pieces that I have let go more, like, and if you can understand that, like, just really what I could say is like a cosmic whirlwind, kind of like, and just letting myself go, as opposed to just like calmly watching and strategically watching for the next line. Just like, it feels a little bit more haphazard, and it almost feels like I'm losing myself, but I'm finding myself at the same time. Those pieces go like that. Like, people gravitate to them so quickly, and they get sold so fast. And it was actually interesting. I was sitting at the kava bar, and I was doing one of these pieces, and somebody sat next to me, and I was like, wow, I just started doing these different kind of lines that I've never done before. And I look over and I'm like, hey, I know them, and I was like, hey, how are you? I'm like, you're sitting next to me. I think you're influencing my painting. And so he looked at it and he was like, oh, cool. And then he left. And then later on, I texted him what it looked like when it was finished. And it was one of the Phoenix ones. And he flipped out, because he sends me a picture back of his arm has a tattoo of a phoenix on it. So there's definitely an influence going on there.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking about, being somebody that works with the energy lines of the bodies, the meridians, right? That's one of my primary sources, as well as the cranial sacral system. So I see lines, I see vectors, I see all of these things that sound very similar to your shapes on bodies. So how does the art influence then how you're working with a body?
That's a great question. I haven't really drawn a direct correlation to the art influencing how I'm working on the body. I think the only like correlation that I can draw is that I'm seeing similar symbols that were things that I was painting at one point, and now I'm working at an energy body level with clients. I don't feel like the art influences it at all. I just see that correlation in like the visual that I receive. I feel like it's more the other way around, that the inspired, energy connection that comes through from either direction, up or down, influences the art heavily, and more so when I allow more.
Yeah. Makes sense. That's really cool. I mean, I'm certain that, just talking to you, all of your time as an artist, I'm sure has impacted the visuals that you get. And then, of course, how you transmit them. But for you, because you've been an artist your whole life, it's natural, right?
Yeah, I guess that's probably more maybe why I don't see that correlation. Yeah, maybe as being a creative, I put it more in that place in my mind. It's one of the reasons why I put the class together that I did, the mindful art class, because we put in meditation and opening up to our creative center and painting together. And so what happens for me in my whole life is that I feel like art has been a way for me to express from the inside out, and also to see like what's coming in. What's coming out from the inside. There's a whole series that I did in my 20s that was like so dark and so like I look back on it and I look at it so profound, because I didn't know at the time. There were female figures that looked like they were coming out of the shadows, and I didn't realize at the time that I was really emitting what was happening for me in that transformation place of coming out of the dark. And when I say dark, I mean like shadows, I mean like depression, I mean like, feeling alone. I was navigating myself in that level of transformation. And I look back on it and, it's art has been a friend for me in many ways. I felt alone. I mentioned earlier that I've been through a lot of trauma in my life. My best friend committed suicide when I was about 23. And it impacted my life very, very deeply, set me back quite a bit. And all I had was art. And I distanced myself from everyone. I didn't trust anyone. There was all kinds of things and stories going on for me. And eventually I was able to find my way, open a door that led to another door, that other people helped me open doors and get to a more stable place, but art has definitely been a friend for me over the years. And it's something that I work with children in at-risk communities to show them the correlation between meditation, art, and expression. And, that to me is like a full circle giving back, because if I had that when I was a kid, like the correlation between the meditation and the breath work and the qigong and all of that, I felt like I would have been a lot more stable. So giving more stability as an option to move into, I think is really amazing, whether we're an at-risk child or an adult with an at-risk child inside.
Yeah. What a gift that you have that full circle experience, and how heightened it is by the spiritual awakening and the allowing and all of these things that you are experiencing on your journey. It's beautiful to really observe. So we are getting close to finishing up. So I'm curious if there is anything you want to share, if there's a transmission that you want to share with our listeners today, or any wisdom, anything like that.
Thank you. So I do tend to move into a space where I connect and open up to transmission from the star family or at Italianos. I definitely feel like I'm connected, but I tune into different dials, and I do prepare for that. So I don't feel that at this moment that there's enough time for me to move into preparation for that, because it takes about an hour. And I'm usually working with an energy body in front of me. However, one thing, let's see, some of the things that I could say that I think have been most impactful in my life. So, you know, for me, it's been a self-awareness journey, and it's been a long journey. And there's been, like I said earlier, a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes those down places have been pretty deep, and there's a lot of despair, a lot of feeling alone. And that's one of the things that I think is a very important thing to mention is that we really aren't alone. Yeah. We can feel like we're alone. That can feel very true for us. We likely have a lot of individuals in our life who would be there for us if we ask. Yeah. And sometimes it can be difficult to ask, especially when you might be feeling like, hey, you know, I don't want to bring other people down, or, you know, I've been going through this for a long time. I don't know when I'm getting out of it. I'd rather just be alone. You know, so it takes a lot of courage to ask, just for someone to be around or just to listen. But I assure you, there are people in your life there that want to listen and be there for you, even though it might seem like they're not. So that would be a really important thing that I would like to, you know, let people know. And the other thing that I think is really important is listening to your body. So, you know, I've made a lot of references today about, you know, the things that have happened in my body, especially during the spiritual opening for me. And that's been a relationship that I've grown over time, and I continue to grow. And there was a time in my life I didn't listen to my body. And a really great example would be the area that feels like the stomach, like it's actually just the center of the body, right below the diaphragm. I used to get this little twinge right there when something might happen. And I thought like it would get like a twinge, and I felt like my stomach would drop. And I interpreted that earlier in my life as like, oh, that's something I'm afraid of. I got to step up to the plate and go through it. Later on, I found out and I realized that that was my guidance system telling me that don't go in this direction. So our body is this immense communication system, and it tells you, like, you know, you might get out of a bad relationship, or, you know, whatever thing that's going on in your life. And in hindsight, you're like, oh, I knew it early on. I saw the red flags. I ignored them. Don't ignore the red flags. They show up in your body, you know, and it takes time to tune in and to understand what it's saying, but you will know. Yeah. So tune into your body and listen to it, because it knows. As I said earlier, I am not a healer. We individually are our own healers. We have an immense divine guidance system supporting us each individually, customized to our own life path, and it communicates through our body. So listen.
I love that. This was such a pleasure, Desiree. And of course, if our listeners want to connect with you, they can do that through your website, which is risingzen.com. And you also have a Facebook account and an Instagram account, which we'll share the links for. So if there's nothing else that you want to share, we'll just conclude now.
Oh, thank you so much. I really am honored that you were taking the time to spend time and allow me to be here with you today and speak with anyone who's listening. So thank you so much.